Hello, welcome to the Hike the Hill prep course, Advocacy 101. We're excited to have you join us in February of 2017 at our Hike the Hill event for WOTA. The reason that we put together this prep course is to make sure that you are as prepared and ready to attend this event, because it is the one time a year that we as OTs are represented in this large number in Olympia. And the work that you're going to do with us is really important in terms of getting in front of our elected officials and asking for their support on the bills that are on our radar for this year. So just wanted to reiterate how important your time with us is, and your preparation will create an opportunity for the best event in Olympia possible. So thank you in advance. We will be talking about a number of different things in this prep course. One is really what is advocacy and why should we as OTs advocate. We'll be talking through what you need to know to be good advocates, and a little bit of Government 101 to prepare you to understand the components of the legislature and who you'll be speaking with and what their influence is. We'll also be talking about what WOTA is doing to advocate. Again, this is one event that we do a year, but we have a lot of people on the ground that are meeting with legislators and of course our lobbyist, who is year-round representing OT in Olympia and with elected officials. We'll also be talking you through how to register for Hill Day and some of the logistics that you'll need to know to set up meetings with your elected officials.
So what is advocacy? Advocacy is the political arena that involves citizens working in partnership with policymakers to develop or change federal and state laws and regulations. I like to think of it as it's the time when the people who've elected the officials get to have a voice and tell those officials how they would like to be represented. Why do OTs need to advocate? Many of our clients are paying for services through Medicare or Medicaid, which are both federally and state-funded healthcare, as well as through schools, which have laws that are originated in the legislature. So the legislature really has a big part in making sure that we get paid for our services and that we can still practice our full scope of practice, making sure that our clients get all of the services that they need in order to live healthy, productive lives, and also to protect our practice as well as our clients' rights.
So when do we advocate? The short answer is now. As we all know, healthcare is in a tremendous state of fluctuation, both in terms of structure and reimbursement. There's a unique opportunity for us right now to shape the future of occupational therapy services in healthcare, but we need to really commit to being involved in the political advocacy process. The limited federal and state budgets put a very big current healthcare services at risk in a very big way, especially for those living in poverty and individuals with disability or chronic health conditions, and those are many of our clients. The reality is that advocacy in the political arena is about building relationships with policymakers. It takes time, it takes strategy, and it takes a lot of patience. Effective advocacy is not free, since it does require time, money, energy, and effort. And it is an investment in the future for occupational therapy and OT clients. Some of the challenges. Occupational therapy is sometimes challenging to describe to policymakers. We all know as OT students and OT practitioners how often we fumble over our words as we try to describe what is occupational therapy. It's the same with our policymakers. We need to be succinct and effective in describing our OT profession. Our holistic and client-centered approach to help our clients meet their own goals is not immediately obvious to legislators. So we have to be the ones who explain and demonstrate the value of OT by telling our stories about the clients we serve. Occupational therapy, as you know, is a broad field with many different legislative issues to monitor in the areas of healthcare and public education. Most occupational therapy practitioners are not aware of the important need for political advocacy, and so this is why we have events like Hike the Hill. We can do this together. We can make a real difference in getting people better access to effective healthcare and public education services. As OTs, we're really in the business of advocating because it is for our clients. The future of OT in Washington State is in our hands. We are very fortunate that advocacy efforts can be educational, empowering, and effective. It really does enrich your life as an OT if you become involved in the political process. Our professional organizations, AOTA and WOTA, have extensive resources, and they are ready to partner with us.
So what do we need to know? What do we need you to know, and what do we need to do to prepare ourselves to advocate? You don't need to be an expert, of course, in how the government system works, but it is helpful to know some basic information about the political process so that you can be best equipped to represent OT at the state level. We'll go through some of the basic principles of how the legislature is set up so that you can, again, be as prepared as possible to really represent us well in Olympia. So the U.S. democratic system of government, of course, is built on the foundation that the government is created of the people. So many of the people that you'll meet in the legislature have varying backgrounds, different professional backgrounds, of course, different geographic backgrounds for the people. They're elected to represent us, and they're elected by us. Our system was designed around a series of checks and balances between various branches of government, both at the federal and state levels. And complex decisions are made by citizens and government officials to create, implement, and enforce the laws and regulations. A couple of the things that you will have the opportunity to do in Olympia are things like sitting in on a committee hearing. You'll see when you attend Hike the Hill this year that there will be sort of a menu of options. So there is both the opportunity to meet with your legislator and or their aide, and also to kind of see how other pieces of the governmental system are functioning. Our U.S. system has checks and balances as well between the federal government and the states, and there are limitations on how far the federal government can influence state rights and local control. So as you get to know OT and as you take a deeper dive with us into some of the state issues, you'll see, of course, that there are things that AOTA is representing on the national level as it relates to the scope of OT, and there are also pieces that are decided on and coordinated on a state level, and some of that will become more evident as you share with us in this event. The basic governmental structure then is three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial. We will be, again, this is both same for the state and national, so we'll be looking at the legislative branch together. And this is where citizens are most involved by electing representatives and meeting with representatives to influence and create laws and policies. So you will get to know who represents you based on your geographic territory and be requesting time to meet with them face-to-face. The House and Senate then is shaped by a determined geography and population density of the area being governed. So there are, of course, our state representatives, and then there are our federal representatives or national representatives in the House and Senate. Constituents in these districts elect representatives from these areas to represent and advocate for their interests.
So everyone in Washington State has 3 state legislators, 2 representatives and 1 senator. Legislators are elected to serve the interests of the citizens in their district, and they are more likely to meet with and listen to their constituents. As an advocate for occupational therapy services, you will need to know the legislators in your district where you live. Find your legislators on the website wa.gov.leg. Sorry, let me say that again, wa.gov.leg. This slide shows you how to find your district and your legislators. How ideas become laws. First, an idea is created, it becomes a bill, it moves through committees, there's a discussion at the committee level, then there are amendments if needed, and then the House and the Senate vote on those bills. The bill is introduced to either House or the Senate and is assigned to the committee, and that's when the information is reviewed. There are public hearings, and then the amendments are written. The bill must pass both the House and the Senate, and then is signed into law by the governor. The law gets coded into the Revised Code of Washington, often called RCWs, and is then enforceable by the executive branch through the state agencies and commissions. Every year, the state legislature convenes in Olympia around mid-January to make decisions on all the essential issues and bills during that session. The odd years are long sessions, about 105 days, and the even years are shorter, about 60 days. There are more opportunities to influence decision-making and get legislation passed during the longer sessions. And the best time to meet your legislators in your hometown is when they are not in session. However, a 10-minute meeting with your representative can help you. It can be very effective on Hike the Hill Day, because we'll have about 10 minutes, and if you're very effective and efficient, you can really make a difference in advocating for our legislative issues.
So the executive branch here in Washington, the governor is the head of our executive branch. On a federal level, that would be the president. The executive branch is responsible for making sure that laws passed by the legislature are implemented and enforced through state agencies and commissions. And below you'll find a list of state agencies and commissions that probably look pretty familiar. It's also important to keep in mind that the governor has the power of veto meaning he can veto any bill that is passed by the legislature. He doesn't feel that it's appropriate to move forward. The role of the judiciary, I can never say it, judiciary or the legal system is to interpret laws, determine the constitutionality of laws, and determine whether individuals or institutions have violated laws. Judicial branch court decisions can be appealed to a higher court, so the Supreme Court level in Washington, which then acts to have a final say in determining the law. So here in Washington, an example would be the Washington Supreme Court delivered a decision requiring insurance in Washington State to cover ABA services. But bringing it all together, while it is common to focus on the legislative branch, advocacy issues affecting OT can arise across all branches of government. Each branch requires a unique strategy for advocacy. So here we have the WOTA Legislative Committee. We have our lobbyist, Kate, and members of and then our members must monitor how legal decisions will affect their practice setting, how the Insurance Commission supporting the regulation of reimbursement. We also look at how the Department of Health is supporting our scope of practice, and how the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction is supporting school-based practitioners. And then we take an appropriate action to advocate for OT. So really what this means is we look at all the bills that are going through the legislative session and how they affect and how they are implemented, and then we really want to make sure that we voice our opinion to best advocate for our profession. WOTA's Hike the Hill Day is one more important way among many where OTs can advocate.
So what else is WOTA doing to advocate? As you can understand from all of the pieces that we've described so far, there's a lot to track and a lot to continue to have on our radar so that we are speaking up for the Washington State OTs in the way that best suits all of our practice and benefits our patients. So we'll be going through some of these specific areas to tell the story of WOTA's advocacy and to let you know how you might get involved in advocacy both at Hike the Hill and other parts, other times and opportunities throughout the year. So as a state professional organization, WOTA has a long history of serving the interests of Washington State OT practitioners. One thing to note, and we will mention it again at Hike the Hill Day, WOTA is completely volunteer run. It is made up of inspired and excited and passionate OTs and OT assistants and OT students that really see the value in, hopefully you do too as you join us in the advocacy efforts that WOTA supports throughout the year. And our mission is really to support you in your future practice. And so we will be reviewing again what to expect at Hike the Hill and how you can be involved at other points throughout the year. Some of the ways to get involved with advocacy are on committees. Our legislative committee, with the involvement of our lobbyist, who is awesome, Kate White-Tudor, really tracks our concerns, so members can come forward with their concerns related to OT practice, and we also strategically monitor advocacy opportunities, whether that's meetings with key legislators, we're tracking the bills throughout the year and meeting as a committee to make sure that we know what our next steps will be. Our Hike the Hill Day Planning Committee is always an opportunity to get involved. If you're inspired by your participation in this year's event, please consider joining us. Rachel, who's on the phone with us presenting today, has been recently involved and is now just entering practice. So it can happen, we will take all comers who are really interested and passionate in making sure that we're well represented in Washington State. And then the WOTA Political Action Committee, go back one slide, Nick, if you would, raises funds to support the re-election of legislators who support our OT issues. So you'll hear from the WOTA PAC, again, the WOTA Political Action Committee, at our Hike the Hill event this year. And it's just another way that we provide support to making sure that the people who do support our interests continue to enjoy re-election and a seat at the table to speak for us.
So here are some past successes by our WOTA organization. The last 10 years or so, we have been very successful in passing some legislation to benefit our clients. Just real briefly, just a couple of years ago, there was a law passed to allow occupational therapy practitioners to access HEALWA, which is a evidence-based literature and resources, for health professionals in Washington State. In 2011, there was a law passed to authorize occupational therapists to purchase, store, and administer specific medications, and this was started by some hand therapists that thought it would be really good for our clients to be able, for OTs to be able to have that access for the medications that the hand therapy clients needed. In 2009, there was a law passed to include wound care management in our scope of practice. Again, this was spearheaded by some hand therapists here in Washington. In 2007, there was a law passed for years of service that would give credit to occupational therapists, and it requires up to 2 years of service credit on the state salary scale for non-school experience to OTs in that respective field. So we are going to revisit this this law, and we hope to this year expand it to more than 2 years service. So how does Hike the Hill Day come together? First of all, we identify occupational therapy practitioners' concerns, and through the legislative committee from WOTA, we determine the current priority legislative issues for the year. We have strategic conversations with the WOTA lobbyists to determine viable pathways to address members' concerns. The Hike the Hill Planning Committee then customizes the annual lobby day around current legislative priorities. Membership gets involved in actively advocating for shared issues affecting OT in Washington with their local legislators at Hike the Hill Day.
So here's the exciting part. It's time to go on to WOTA.org. You can follow the link on this slide or type it in. I actually went on today, and about halfway down the first screen that I came to, I found where I clicked to register. So you can go ahead and register for the event. And then also, we looked at it a little bit earlier, but in here you'll also say who your legislator is. So whether you attend WOTA Hike the Hill Day in Olympia or you meet with your legislator in your hometown, you'll need to know a few things. And it's important to know that our legislators represent us, and we can request a meeting with them as constituents at any time. But before you do that, you need to know how to set up a meeting with your legislator, how to prepare for the meeting, how to effectively communicate with your legislator, and how to follow up after your meeting with your legislator. So I think we went over this website a little bit earlier. I actually used it today because I recently moved here, and I found out I was in District 38. It was very easy. It took me about 30 seconds. When you do use it, you just type in your address and make sure you hit the legislative button versus the Congress, so that, or congressional, so that you stay, so it shows you your state representatives versus your federal.
So you will then go to request a meeting. Go back one slide there, Nick. And you can do that a number of different ways. One way is by calling the legislator or emailing. And I think different people that have attended the Hike the Hill event over the years have different varying success one way or the other. So I would really encourage you to try both. You will get someone on the phone that's an assistant, or often leave a message. And really the biggest thing that we can encourage is to, again, try multiple modes of communication, and also try them more than once. These are very busy people with large constituent groups, and many are vying for their attention on a number of different issues. You know, one thing to note is that this year's legislative session is a little bit longer, but again, it's a lot that are there's a lot coming at these folks from a lot of different angles. So really make your case for why you want to get in front of your legislator at Hike the Hill, and letting them know that you're there with a group, and we have a little bit of a sample email to kind of help you out in a couple of slides as well. Things to include in your request. Again, making sure that you let them know you're a constituent from their legislative district. So again, they're representing you, and they want to meet with people that they're representing. That you'd like to schedule a meeting. Again, if you're joining us for Hike the Hill, an opportunity to meet with them is at Hike the Hill, and we really encourage you to do that. You'll be jazzed up, you'll be excited, you're going to be hearing about all of our legislative priorities. It's really a great way to put those priorities in the minds of the people that are representing you. Include your name, address, and phone number, and briefly mention the OT-related issues you'd like to discuss. Because we continue to monitor the issues as we get closer to the event, you will get more communications through our live webinar in January, and also through some documents, preparation documents and handouts that we'll be sending out prior to the event. So stay tuned for the specific information that you can pass along to your legislators when you request a meeting. But here's a sample email. Again, try multiple modes. Email works really great for some folks, not as well for others. Let the legislator know who you are, what your background is. You're a student, you're an occupational therapist, you live in their district. Keep it short and sweet, and make sure that your point is understood at a glance. Again, they're going through a lot of information from a lot of constituents. And then follow-up is really important. We can't stress enough, we really think that part of this process and learning about the governmental system and how it ties in with OT is by going through this process of requesting a meeting. So the request for legislative appointments is on you as students, as practitioners, because the people that you're going to be meeting with are most interested in meeting with those that they represent. So try again, call again. If you hear back that your legislator can't meet with you directly, do ask to meet with his or her legislative aide. They often brief their legislators and have opportunities to connect them with the issues that they've heard about. So try to get a meeting with someone in their office. Schedule any time you can get an appointment. We like to encourage people to kind of use the window after 10 a.m. so that you get a chance to be briefed by our lobbyists. We will also be doing some sort of practice sessions and allowing for some opportunities to do some kind of mock sessions. So what might a conversation with your legislator sound like, look like, to prepare you for having those conversations on your own a little bit later in the day. But again, take what you can get, and we'll be sending out a tentative agenda as we get closer to the event as well. I think it is important to note that the logistics of the event are fairly loose. Again, as I mentioned previously, there'll be sort of a menu of events, but it is really helpful to know what to expect, that things do change as you are in attendance, and some of that's based on the legislators' availability. So do come prepared with a flexible attitude and mindset.
So here are some of the logistics for Hike the Hill. As Lauren said just in the previous slide, that the structure of the day is fairly fluid based on legislator availability to speak with us as a group, and therefore the agenda needs to be quite flexible. Besides your legislative appointment, you can expect the following during that day. A welcome from Sarah Jensen, our WOTA president, and updates from our WOTA lobbyist, Kate White-Tudor. To hear from fellow OTs on other advocacy efforts, you'll be hearing some different stories from OTs that have done advocacy for occupational therapy. You also have an opportunity to practice your legislative conversations with other OTs in the audience. There will be a menu of options for downtime, and one of those is a tour of the Capitol building. And there'll be opportunities to sit in on various committee hearings. These are the legislators listening to what the bills are and debating those bills. There'll be some networking opportunities for OTs in various practice areas, as well as the students from many of our Washington State OT and OTA programs. Next slide. The logistics. Here are some directions and parking information. We are meeting in the legislative building, and you'll be able to see a campus map on the next slide. We'll be meeting in the actual Columbia room, which is a large room that it will accommodate all of us. It's in the lower level of the legislative building. You can find directions on the web as far as directions on coming into Olympia, and there'll be parking information also on the web. It's a lot of information on that legislative website. Next slide. Oh, sorry, slide before. Here's the campus, Capitol campus map. And you can park on the campus, but it's very limited, so be sure and carpool.
So the next part that we're going to talk about is educating yourself on the issues that we're going to be lobbying for. A couple of points on this. Last year I was a student, and I know a lot of students attend this event, and we love to see students there. I remember a lot of people said, but I am just barely an OT practitioner. I'm not really sure what to do or what to say or if I know enough. And the answer is you know enough, and we will help you to learn what you need to know about our current issues that we are advocating for. The other reason that we will educate you on this is it's really important that we have a cohesive front just so that we can be the most effective possible. So on January 22nd, we'll have a go-to webinar to go over the issues, and then you can also review our annual legislative priorities handout to learn a little bit more. Please know that before you go into your legislator, we will give you all the tools you need to feel confident in speaking with them. So preparing to meet with your legislator, it's very simple. I actually Googled my legislator earlier today, and there was lots and lots of information. But just get to know them a little bit, read their bio, find out why they are championing, for certain causes, and what they're passionate about. Sharon, here, our example, I Googled her as well, and it was very evident in the first few minutes that her passion is education and that she connects well on that. If you can take the time to make just a 30-second story that connects you to your legislator and take that with you in your pocket, they love to hear it. Last year, I know that it was very effective. One student that we went with had a 30-second story all lined up, and that ended up giving us a lot more time with our legislator because she connected with it. So the next slide.
So the legislator meeting. Here's some general structure that we want you to be aware of. Usually you get 10 to 15 minutes with your legislator. It's not very long, but you can be very effective and efficient and get your point across within that 10 or 15 minutes. So introduce yourself and first of all thank them for their time. As you know, they're very busy, but they do want to hear from you because you are one of their constituents. Open with an explanation of OT, but steer clear of asking them if they know what OT is. That puts them on the spot. So it's better to offer practical examples of what OT looks like. And so share your own personal OT stories. It's much more meaningful to share a story of a person receiving OT or just your experience as an OT or even as an OT student. Connect OT to their interest and passions. Maybe they had a grandmother who had had a stroke, or they have a child with autism. They may not share all that information, but if they do, then you can connect what you do as an OT to the family members or friends of the legislator that have some challenges. Ask the legislators to support specific legislation and use your handout as a guide for this year's legislative asks. Thank them and leave your contact information and handout. General communication tips. Be sure and speak clearly and look them in the eye. Stay away from acronyms and jargon, and we have a lot of jargon in OT and all the different alphabet soup, but stay away from those because that really sets you apart from the legislators. So tailor your message to them, and remember your legislator serves the citizens of their district, including you. If you are a constituent of them, they will listen to you because they want your vote. Be gracious and courteous to the staff, the staff support members, as well as the legislator. Practice your talking points before your meeting.
This is from one of the representatives in the state legislature that has been supportive of us in the past and has come and spoken with our representatives from WOTA. We're not going to play it now, but I really encourage you to play this link, and we'll make sure that all the school programs have a direct link. You should be able to click on it from the presentation here, but it was created really with you in mind to prepare WOTA Hike the Hill Day participants for their to have the most successful event. And it's really some do's and don'ts for your legislative appointments. So do check that out when you have a chance. Here are some additional articles for how to communicate with your legislator and to really have the best meeting possible. It is a short meeting, as Kathy mentioned, but we know that we can be effective with some good preparation. So review some of these tips and making the time that you have with the lawmaker count. Again, some resources for you.
So here are a few more tips about. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Lauren.
Communicating about OT. That's okay. As Kathy mentioned, make it specific and personal. If there's something that you can connect to the legislator, again, maybe they've had a personal experience, or if they do have a connection to OT, how can you expand their knowledge of what you do in a way that might be different from what they already understand? And do know as many of the public, as is the case for a lot of people in the world, they may not know what OT is already. So keep it simple and use examples to tell your story. Also connect it to a legislative ask. The personal stories are really what stick in the minds of people that we share our stories with, and so use your personal examples, how or why you got into OT, or a touching client story or something that really drives home the point of what our ask legislatively is this year. And again, you'll learn more about those asks and more specifics as we get into the January go-to webinar. So please join us for that as well. And then just remember to consider what's in it for the legislator. As you are sharing your issues and ideas, why should they know and how would it benefit the people that they represent?
So we're giving you lots of tips for communicating about OT, so here are a few more. Consider covering the following basics. Let them know what populations that you serve as an occupational therapist and highlight some examples that might be relevant to them. Mention some of the facilities in which OTs are working, such as public schools, hospitals, mental health clinics, etc. How is OT affected by the legislation? Try to use some examples relevant to them. And how OT is distinct from other rehab professions. Oftentimes people mix OT and PT, what's the difference, speech therapy, etc. Try and give them a distinct description of what OT brings to the table and how unique it is for their clients. How OTs provide cost saving. This is a really important point. If you can all say how it saves money to be able to provide occupational therapy up front. So at the beginning of maybe a patient's injury or early intervention for young children with disabilities, provide those examples because they listen to the cost-saving message that you have for them. How OTs support people returning to active involvement. So those are just several more tips that you can do in communicating what OT is to the legislators. Here's some more tips for communicating about OT. Show them, don't tell them. It's much more effective to share specific examples, if we've mentioned before, about how OT has helped individuals. Use visual media. Bring photos or video clips, of course with permission of your clients. And show the legislators how OT can actively help people with disabilities and chronic illnesses. Give examples. There is a video on the web. It's called Because of Occupational Therapy. It's just a few minutes of, it's a great little way to describe occupational therapy and the effect of OT. And another one is, another web video is Promoting Occupational Therapy. These are just a few tools that you can use when you're in the legislator meeting if they're wanting to see a visual. Follow up with WOTA. After you've met with your legislator or the legislative assistant, there will be an opportunity to share with Kate White-Tudor, our lobbyist, if there's any follow-up needed. And we, on Hike the Hill Day, we are the eyes and ears for Kate. Because we'll come back and tell Kate some of our experiences with those legislators, and she can follow up with them directly if there's some questions or concerns or bills that we need to be aware of. Or so it'll be very important for us to share with her what our legislative, what our experience has been with our legislators that day. So there'll be a flip chart in the Columbia room to record items that need follow-up from Kate.
So we spoke a little bit earlier about how to get involved, but I really just want to reiterate that I was able to get involved with the legislative committee knowing very little about Washington politics, moving here from out of state, and they have held my hand wonderfully. But then again, just coming to Hike the Hill or being on the planning committee or being involved with the WOTA PAC, we really just appreciate your participation. Next slide. So we hope that this PowerPoint has been helpful to you. We hope that you can now have a better understanding of advocacy and the basic principles of how our government works. Learn a bit about WOTA's Hike the Hill Day in Olympia. Know other specific ways to effectively advocate for your clients and your profession throughout the year, and know how to communicate effectively with your state legislature. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email us at intouch@wota.org. And to finish up, just a very big thank you to Cheryl, Josie, Catherine, and Lauren about organizing this presentation, and Lauren for chairing our Hike the Hill Day. We're excited and we hope to see you all there.
Thank you for joining us, and we're very excited to see you in Olympia. Reach out if you have any questions, and we're looking forward to having you join us on January 22nd as we